Only the very weak-minded refuse to be influenced by literature and poetry. This is a quote from one of my favorite books, Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. Said by Tessa Gray, the sassy assertion is a unique perspective. Not gonna lie, I agree that literature and poetry are very influential. However, in order to have influence, they first need to be written. And by written, I mean readable. And by readable, I mean grammatical. That was my attempt to lead into our very first grammar help video. Sorry if that was slightly aggressive in any form. To preface, this is the first video of a 2-part series. We will definitely be doing more grammar videos, but for this first section, there was just too much content to fit into one single video. There will be a link to the second part in the description. Anyways, here we go. The recent Instagram post focuses mainly on clauses, but I hope this video series will illuminate all the different things there are to learn about phrases, clauses, and sentences. I know that it sounds very elementary, but this is one of the most important lessons to learn if you're trying to start writing, whether a novel or an essay. In some genres, like poetry, grammar rules don't really apply, but essay writing seems universal, whether it is in standardized testing or applications for a job. Knowing the things I'm about to explain can be very beneficial and will prove to be great skills to have in the long run. We're going to be discussing them in the order of phrases and then clauses, and then our discussion of sentences is reserved for the second part. This made the most logical sense to me when I was setting this up, which you'll likely understand by the end of this video series. First off, phrases. From my research, I found that there are 8 different categories every phrase can be divided into. First, noun phrases. Noun phrases are basically just the string of words that make up the noun within the sentence, whether it be the subject or the object. For example, the gray chair. The gray chair is a phrase since it not only lacks an actual verb, but also simply works as a noun. It could function as a noun in basically any sentence. For example, I could say, he sat on the gray chair, or the gray chair was in the corner of the room. In both sentences, the gray chair functions as a noun phrase. Next, adjective phrases. Adjective phrases simply function as adjectives, just how noun phrases function as nouns. They describe the noun phrase that is elsewhere within the sentence. The example I've provided on your screen is very aggressive. This could be used in a sentence with a noun phrase like, the very aggressive gray chair flew above our heads. Notice how in that sentence, very aggressive was modifying gray chair. This brings us to the next type of phrase, prepositional. Prepositional phrases start with a preposition. Prepositions that are within the prepositional phrases tend to describe location or setting. Let's go back to the sentence example I used. The very aggressive gray chair flew above our heads. In this sentence, above our heads is a prepositional phrase. See how above describes the location of the gray chair itself. And above our heads clearly provides an image of the chair flying above the individual's heads. Here's a fairly long list of some of the most common prepositions. Take a second to look it over. Notice how common they are and reflect on how often you may have used them today already. There are so many phrase variations you can come up with. About the book, above the ladder, across the floor, after the fact, and so on. Now we have participial phrases. A participle is a word formed from a verb that functions more as an adjective or noun. For example, the word upset can be a participle. When used in the phrase upset by the show, it is working as an adjective, whereas he got upset, it's working more as a verb. Since it's working as an adjective in the phrase upset by the show, it could describe a noun within the same sentence. If I were to say, Maria, upset by the show, left early, the participial phrase would be describing Maria. Next on the list are verb phrases. These are phrases made up of the verb and the words after the verb of the sentence. With the phrase given, all we would need to do to make a sentence would be to just add a subject, like a noun phrase. A sentence could be, Jack and his friends are eating lunch. Jack and his friends functions as a noun phrase, being added onto the example on your screen. Bear with me, there are only 3 left. Now, adverb phrases. Adverb phrases function quite literally as adverbs. They consist of the adverb itself and potentially extra details, like in the case of only so often. Only is the adverb, so often adds extra detail to how only the situation is. Almost done. Gerund phrases. Gerunds are the ing form of a verb, like cooking, running, talking, dancing. Gerund phrases are made up of the gerund form of a verb followed by a small detail. In this case of the example, dancing in the rain is built from both a gerund phrase and a prepositional phrase. Dancing is the gerund, while in the rain is a prepositional phrase describing that the dancing is happening in the rain. Last but not least, infinitive phrases. You would likely know what the term infinitive means if you have taken a foreign language course. For example, an infinitive in Spanish would be hablar, an infinitive in French would be parler, an infinitive in Latin would be dicere, all of which stand for to speak. In English, the infinitive case is just the form of the verb that contains the word to and does not require a subject, like to sleep, or also just to speak. If I were to form this into a sentence, I could try, he goes to sleep. Notice how there is no noun or subject that matches exactly with the infinitive phrase. I really hope that crash course in phrases was detailed enough because now I have a small activity for you all to try. I'll give a few moments for you to pause the video and answer the questions on your own. Time's up. Here are the answers. If you got one wrong, don't be discouraged. I recommend rewinding the video to where I discuss each topic to get a better understanding of why you got it wrong. Now, on to clauses. I may have already mentioned some of this earlier, but let me just add a little more detail in case I left you with questions. The largest difference between a phrase and a clause is that a clause actually has both a subject and a verb. Phrases sometimes include one or the other, but never both. Clauses always must include both. I know you all are capable of reading, but I'll give a short ad-lib to what's on the screen already. The subject of a sentence is the noun that is performing or being modified by the verb of the sentence. It is called the subject specifically because it is the special noun that decides how the verb of the sentence is going to be formed or conjugated. Then, the complete thought. The complete thought is just something to add detail to the sentence. He eats. This is essentially a clause, but it does not serve an actual purpose. You don't know what he's eating, you don't know where he's eating, you don't know when he's eating. There are way too many questions left unanswered. Some forms of writing permit this kind of sentence, but in the large majority of cases, especially essays, you should add a complete thought in addition to the subject and the verb. To complete he eats, I could add the detail of what he's eating, to make he eats apple pie. This is an independent clause. There are two different types of clauses, independent and dependent. The symbols of IC and DC will be discussed in the second part of this duology video series. As I just mentioned, he eats apple pie is an independent clause. This is because it can stand alone as its own sentence. Here is a list of a few independent clauses as examples. Take a second to read through them. Dependent clauses start with some type of subordinating conjunction. Subordinating conjunctions are defined as having the sole purpose of beginning a dependent clause, which can also sometimes be referred to as a subordinate clause. Here is a list of several common subordinating conjunctions. Some examples of use include after he nudged the desk, although her mother did not agree, as if someone were observing, as long as we're home before dark. Something you can notice with all four of those clauses is that they do not sound like full, complete sentences. Yes, they might function as part of a dialogue as an answer to a question, but you wouldn't simply write, as long as everyone agrees, to start out a paragraph of a formal essay. Dependent clauses require an independent clause attached as well to form a complete sentence, but we'll discuss this much later in the other video. There are a few types of dependent clauses: noun clauses, adjective clauses, and adverbial clauses. They essentially function as they are named. Noun clauses work to provide a noun within the sentence, adjective clauses work to modify or describe a noun within the sentence, just like a normal adjective, and adverbial clauses work to modify or describe a verb, adjective, or other adverb within the sentence, like a normal adverb. An example of a noun clause is Embry remembered when her father taught her how to skate. This dependent clause functions directly as the object of the sentence. The sentence would not be complete without the extra clause. It would simply say, Embry remembered. What did Embry remember? When her father taught her how to skate. An example of an adjective clause is Ryan's house, that is perched atop a hill, looks larger than life. The dependent clause in this sentence directly describes the subject, Ryan's house. The sentence works fine without the dependent clause, but the clause adds extra detail and sentence variety. Read the sentence again. Can't you just picture Ryan's house sitting on top of that hill? Exactly. That's what an adjective clause does. It adds to the detail of the sentence and adds imagery. An example of an adverbial clause is, in a blind rage, Alex charged at the wall as if it were his greatest enemy. The dependent clause directly describes the way Alex charged at the wall. Without the clause, the sentence would work fine, but the extra detail it provides helps the reader to better envision the scene. Phew, we're done discussing clauses for now. Here's a small activity to assess your ability to differentiate independent from dependent. Please pause the video to take your time to answer. Time's up. Here are the answers. If you got something different, I recommend rewinding the video. Here's another small activity to work on, phrases versus clauses. I know this is a long video, just bear with me. It'll be worth it when you can finally grasp the concepts strongly and confidently. Please pause the video now if you need more time. Here are the answers. I added the type of phrase in parentheses if you also wanted to work on that. Lastly, to wrap up phrases and clauses, I made a short list of 8 notes. These 8 notes are what I really hope you take away from the video. They seem to encompass literally everything I discussed, but I hope putting them in short and sweet form makes it easier to keep in mind. Thank you so much for bearing with me through that crash course on phrases and clauses. I know it probably was a lot to take in at once, but I hope it marinates with you for a while, in particular those last 8 notes. If you have any questions, comments, critiques, or concerns, just let us know down below or contact us via our card.co, linked in the description. Please feel free to like the video and subscribe if you would like to support our growing channel. See you in the second part.